Okay, all set.
Mm-hmm.
Good. So, Rachel, thank you for joining me. And
You?
for people who may not know you, this is Dr. Rachel Hott. Um, I'll say a few things, although there's many things that I could say. But
Thank you.
Rachel and her husband Steve are the founders of the NLP Center of New York for what 25 or 30 years now. I don't know how many years.
Whatever 1986 is, just
Oh my gosh, yeah.
figure
So
that out. Yeah.
it's adding up, and
Yeah.
I started working with them, I would say, in the later 90s.
Mhm.
But not only have I had a great opportunity to work with Rachel, and she was one of my early teachers, and she's really a good friend and somebody that I'll go have tea with, and I really enjoy when we do that. And Rachel, we'll touch a little bit more on some of the things in your background, but is there anything
Mhm.
that comes to mind that you'd like to share with people?
Just that, we know each other from the NLP world, right? But
Mm,
our worlds have widened. But sure, starting in NLP for me, like 1981.
mm,
So I always feel like I grew up with NLP because I was like
mm.
26 at the time, and
Wow.
have gone through many different identities as somebody who came in single. I meet Steven Leeds, we marry, we open this business, um, raise a family, go back to school for clinical psych degree. I just think it's interesting, and then being in all the different facets of the seasons of our lives, that I could be
Mm,
now here in this mature life
mm,
of somebody who understands uh, aging. So
mm,
just lots of different experiences, with NLP always being a foundation. So,
mm.
and having you in there, it's been great. I always call you the Renaissance man, because of all your different interests. So I'm so glad to continue, and now you're in this world of interviewing, so that's great.
Well, today we're going to touch on a couple different topics, and I haven't briefed Rachel that much for everyone's awareness. So we're going to see where
Mhm.
this goes. But um,
Okay.
Rachel and I have a couple of things in common, and one is that we both also had experience in Aikido, which
Mhm.
was an
Mhm.
interesting thing to notice over the years.
Mhm.
You studied what before or when you started with NLP,
I
or?
studied before in Massachusetts, and I moved to New York at the 18th Street Dojo, which was, the one that you've gone to,
Hmm.
and
Yeah.
and was like prepared for like the heavy New York kind of cathartic, intensity, and then discovered NLP, and then
Mm,
discovered that Aikido doesn't always have to be so forceful, and
mm,
realizing the connection of NLP and Aikido in that kind of communication of receiving,
mm,
leading, right?
hmm,
And
hmm.
yeah, you and I never got to do Aikido. It's been more like a talk. I mean, you have remained. I probably stopped around 1980. Well, we opened the center in 86, probably stopped around 84. My
Mm,
Aikido. My Aikido
got it.
started in like 1978 or something like that.
Okay. Yeah. And yeah, in the my understanding is the New York dojo was, as you said, a bit more forceful in those
Mm-hmm.
days. It
Mm-hmm.
was,
Mm-hmm.
I've heard many stories about that, and it's
Mm-hmm.
interesting. I came to Aikido, um, I think initially very much through Stephen Gilligan, and
Oh, really? I
yeah,
didn't
and
realize
Steve.
that.
Well, he was one of the kind of early people that sort of put a bug in my head. And remember,
Oh,
we had him, we
he
hosted him
came as a
here
guest.
with Robert
Yeah.
Diltz,
Yeah,
and
he loves to tell a story about me and Aikido, like, because as soon as I knew he did Aikido, I probably like did some kind of wrist grip or something.
oh,
But I
okay,
didn't realize
yeah.
he influenced you. I just thought you found it on your own.
No, it was interesting, and this is going to tie back to one of your special abilities. But yeah, Steve was talking about this idea of receiving an attack and aligning with the attack. And
Mhm.
in an Aikido, you'll move in and you'll step in the same direction, facing the same
Mhm.
direction that the
Mhm.
attacker is
Mhm.
facing. And he
Mhm.
started talking about how we can align with the intention of
Mhm.
somebody else's communication.
Yes.
So that
Yeah.
was, for me, that was a very powerful idea. And then what happened actually was I was going to Japan, and you said, as you do,
Oh.
you said, "Hey, Rob, you should look up this guy, Charlie Badenhop, because he likes NLP and you like NLP, and he does Zen and you
Yes.
do Zen, and he does Aikido and you like martial
The
arts."
match, one of my super qualities of the matchmaker, doesn't
You're a
matter what
matchmaker.
it is.
And it's
Connector,
funny.
I guess. It's,
Well, it's funny. So Rachel has done this, not just with me, she does this all over the place, where she will put people together who seemingly have, the first couple of times you did this, you listed two or three things that I had in common with somebody. And I said,
yeah.
"Rachel, that is so obvious. Like, there's no way that will work." And and that person became one of my best friends. And
Charlie
then
Badenhop.
Charlie became a very,
Uh,
very close friend.
uh-huh.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then
And I don't
Charlie
even
really got
know,
me into Aikido.
I don't know how I knew Charlie, because first of all, this is a very long time ago. Somehow he and I must have had one interaction, like
Mm.
one, I
Well, and
really
he
don't
worked with
remember.
Steve. He worked with Stephen Gilligan for a long time.
Oh, maybe
At
that's it.
He would
Gilligan
go
might
to
have
trance
mentioned.
camps. Yeah.
I see. So yeah, yeah. I don't have the connection anymore. But you're so right. You and I have laughed at my attempts, and sometimes I have to control myself with that, power of like, oh, this or that, because, you know, sometimes I don't know why, but sometimes it seems excessive. But I do enjoy saying, oh, you would do well, meet this person, or read this book, or watch this show. I don't know, all
And
those things.
surprisingly, in my experience, when you've done it, it's had an incredible success rate.
Mm,
And so I was thinking about that.
mm.
And what also occurred to me is that, at least my experience of you, is that you speak to people through the lens of their interests
Ah,
very
yeah, yeah.
often.
Well, that's a part of the Ericksonian utilization, right? But I
Mm,
want to credit you with, you can offer something or a person or an idea to somebody. Not everybody always takes, right? So
mm,
there's something also about you following through,
mm,
there's something about that. I don't do anything except, you're right, kind of utilize, oh, you like this, oh, you like that, how about this, right?
mm-hmm,
But
mm-hmm,
then it, so there is something about you, Rob, and you're taking something like you said when you heard Steven describe Aikido, it got in there, right?
mm-hmm.
So
Yeah.
something gets in there. But yeah, I do. Utilization's a big one, you know.
Mm,
Maybe when I say you're the Renaissance man, you have so many, it's easy. It's easy to suggest things to you.
right. But what I guess my experience of it does work, whatever works is, but it makes your communication very accessible to me when you're relating it to these things that I do.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
And then we also have sort of an overlap just in movement and
mm-hmm,
body and
mm-hmm,
dance. We're
mm-hmm.
both, we both love dance.
Yeah.
Um, and I think, that's also something that I'm interested in with your work, is that just like looking through the lens of the body in terms of change work.
Mm.
um, is that also something that you're very much bringing to your clients, or is it
Well,
primarily,
because the first graduate program that I went to was dance movement therapy. A lot of people have said, oh, how do you bring dance movement therapy into your sessions?
Mm.
And, here we are sitting, right? We're not dancing.
Mhm.
And at the same time, uh, you and I could start to notice something and feel something. And it usually shows up in the person's objecting part. Somebody says, I want to be free. I want to have lightness. I want to eat more healthy, right? It can be
Mm.
very grand or very like specific. And then that moment of saying, well, that's great, go ahead, and of course, what's getting in the way, what's the objection, and fear or exhaustion or whatever. That's the moment I would probably bring it into the body, right? Where do you feel that? That's very
Mm.
contemporary now with somatic experiencing, but that was my training in the early 1980s, late 1970s, feeling where is it in your body. Of course, as a dance movement therapist, we'd say move it out. Like, how would
Mm.
that fear move, right? Which we could
Mm.
do. And you can
Mhm.
see how some of the creative work that Stephen Gilligan is proposing is like, even if you're sitting, how does it feel physically,
Mhm.
right? And we could
Mhm.
stand up right now, really, like on our
Mhm.
Zoom, if we wanted to. And I have sometimes it pushed the camera back and stood up.
Mm.
So that's the way um, that it comes in. But we're not putting on music, we're not moving around. So like, it has different qualities to it. But
But
the
it's
body
nice
is
that
always there.
you're calibrating the person's physiology,
That's right. That's right.
um, and I think your background really allows that in a
And I'm
certain way.
asking my clients to start learning that, right? To
Mhm.
start where, it is a kind of a odd question sometimes. Where is the thought located? Where is the feeling in your body? And
Mhm.
very traditionally somebody say in my head, right? And you
Mhm.
go with that. And that's right. That's where we hear it. Then where do you feel it is usually going to lead somebody, and
Mhm.
no surprise, it's usually somewhere from the throat to the lower belly, typically
Mhm.
somewhere in the trunk,
Is
occasionally.
where the disturbance is, or the
Yeah,
resistance. Yeah,
yeah, yeah,
very often, yes.
yeah. And then learning how to tune into sensation. So, yeah, no, I think it's great that we both have that movement awareness and creative awareness. And, if you're working in person, there's even more opportunity. But I've
Mhm.
chosen to do Zoom, and so I ask clients a lot, show me and stand
Mm.
up. I'll stand up
Mhm.
with you. Like if I say to you right now, place your hand and it's in your center. I don't know if you're really doing that,
Right, right.
right?
Yeah, they could be anywhere. Yeah.
Yeah, it's sort of the
Yeah.
trust moment of I do say, are your feet on the ground? I often ask. Now I see a thumb.
Right,
Right now.
right. Yeah.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
it's, doing NLP sessions, Ericksonian hypnosis sessions on Zoom. There's like the new art, of
Yeah.
how you do it that way, right?
And it's then there's, calibrating the physiology of a potential resource.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
If
mm-hmm,
if the person has an idea of a resource or access to a resource.
mm-hmm,
Um, so, maybe you start to get a contrast,
mm-hmm.
or you can create a movement from one to the other.
Oh yeah, that's
Uh,
nice. That would be nice, like a stuck position to the
mhm.
more open, embraced, free position for sure. Um, yeah, I like that. Ideally, right? We present in our resourceful physiology,
Mm.
and then you feel the subtle. It's usually the collapse,
Right.
and that wouldn't work well on your Aikido mat, if you were coming in with that, right? So
Yeah.
but we're not also about like chest puffed and ready to be warrior either,
Right.
it's being
It's that
present.
centered place, and it really is in the middle.
The wavering. Yeah,
It's not overly forceful in one direction, and
yeah,
um,
yeah. You know what, Rob, for me, that I kind of am so open to is seeing how NLP, Ericksonian hypnosis, taps into, I would say, Zen or Buddhism, or like that idea of the middle way,
Mm,
the balance, the, we say there's no right way, right? There are
mm,
many ways. There's a both and.
mhm,
That it's more spiritual in a way, although the technology, like change the voice, make it further away, these some modality status ways of going, states of suggestion, are not always so spiritual, but the overall principle of acceptance, self,
mhm.
being here now, oh my gosh, being present, how important is that, right? We do look at the past, right? In NLP, it's not like it's a psychoanalytic analysis, but we do look at the past, and then remembering, here we are. Even though we've known each other, we don't even know the exact date. We could probably vaguely go back into our memories of like the training room and when we met,
Mhm.
and knowing all the different things, but then say, oh my goodness, hello, October 8th, 2021. This is Rob Schwartz version and
Right.
Rachel Hott version, and it's like, whoa, exciting. And you can predict some things, but that's the excitement of like, oh, what's our variable change today?
Yeah, I heard about an exercise years ago. Actually, Doug O'Brien shared this with me. And then when I asked him about it again, I don't think he recalled. This is something he shared years ago. But he said it was sort of an Erickson exercise where you would talk about some sort of issue, and then he would keep kind of gently interrupting you and bring you back to the present.
Oh, that's nice.
Yeah. And so when Doug sort of offered that to me, and then he said, you want to do it, I didn't really have much interest in that at that time.
Yes.
I don't know, I was like
Yes.
30. And I think what it points out to me is at that age, I was so interested in where I thought I should be going.
Yes.
And the present wasn't that vibrant.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
And the present wasn't yet a resource, or I didn't perceive it as a resource.
That's interesting. On the timeline of our lives, where does the present become more essential? Just I'm not sure if there's some background noise. Do you hear anything?
I hear just a little ringing or something. Is that what it is?
It's a vacuum, which is the joke in my sessions with clients, that
Oh, okay.
we don't live in a vacuum,
Right. Right.
and sometimes
But we
life
live
sucks,
adjacent to one. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
but it will stop also. But just if our
That's fine.
listenership is hearing something, one of the things I was thinking about you when you mentioned Doug is that you have continued to keep learning from others,
Mm,
like following through with trainers and teachers. I and reading, which is another one of our common
mm,
shared interests,
mm,
that I'll go towards books and different ideas. But I admire that you have found some teachers, and then I look to you, say, tell me what the latest thing is,
mm,
give
mm.
me that,
Yeah.
and then I play with it. My people who I'm listening to are probably a little bit more traditional right now, like Esther Perel. So I'd say I'd
Hmm.
follow her.
Hmm.
I don't have anybody else right now who I'm
But
following.
that was something else I was reflecting on. You are such an avid learner, um, and note taker. So
Yeah,
another one of Rachel's superpowers is if she's attending a seminar that I'm not,
yeah.
she'll send me her notes, and it's like being at the seminar. It's amazing.
Yeah, the transcribing, I think I developed that when I was observing people in, it was called the Institute for Management Competency. It was kind of the parallel to when I started doing NLP. And it was a group of people who volunteered to come to the American Management Association, and we would observe them through a one-way
Mm,
mirror. And I was called a coder. It was mostly verbal behavior, some non-verbal, and then we would give them an assessment. So
mm,
I think I really developed that skill then, and it's unconscious,
mm.
with the ability to type fast, but that's why I
That
think.
sounds like that Laban.
Oh,
decision coding or something. Yeah.
dance notation, which I learned a little bit of, and
Mm,
you're right, it could be
mm,
that, but this was plain language, like it would say, oh, that person is interacting, they have self-confidence, or
mm,
oh, that person is interacting, they know how to use groups, managing group process,
mm-hmm,
or oh, that person is using a friend, use of socialized power, getting
mm,
allies. It's good for
mm-hmm.
business. Um, it's called managing. Well, Rick Boyatz, but it's also ancient now, right? Like
Got it.
1978 again. Management competencies. But some of these things are still relevant.
Mm.
Concepts in business. The thing that I like the best, I think I sent you the Humor Seriously book. Did you? I don't know if you did that quiz.
Oh, I didn't. I
That's
didn't.
a
Okay.
good one for your listenership to
Mm,
check out. Humor serious, so it's humor, comma, seriously. But there's a quiz you can take, and then I read the book, and it was all about, especially in business, but really in life, bringing levity, you know,
mm,
levity, joy, connection. So like it really spoke to me, and it's not about you don't have to be the funniest person in the room.
mm-hmm,
It's not like you have to plan your joke ahead of time. And you
mm-hmm,
don't have to be the comedian who literally has the whole thing written, which is so
mm-hmm.
disappointing, right? Like you wish they would be spontaneous. But just to bring joy. And I think one of the things that you've seen is I really just love to have fun in a training room as we're
Mm,
learning,
mm-hmm.
Like it's not all about just being hilarious or, which is great, but having
Right.
fun.
It's simultaneous. Yeah. And
Mm-hmm.
especially because so many students, I mean, and I'll include us, have anchors of learning being this serious context where people tend to freeze up. And
Yeah.
just yesterday, as you know, I was doing a
Mm-hmm.
review with one of our groups,
Mm-hmm.
and it's almost like an anchor of like, oh, it's a midterm.
That's right. Well, just say the word
And
say the word test, and you're gonna get the trigger.
yeah, so having some humor is a great way to kind of lighten their state and enhance
Hmm.
learning, I would say.
Hmm. Yeah, I was talking to somebody about, oh, I know, online dating, right?
Mm,
And they said that really what they want is somebody who's honest, loyal, fun, loving, right? And
mm.
I said that would be great. You hit all those beautiful criteria. Maybe at the end you say, and also likes axe throwing. Like
Right, right, right,
just
right,
you gotta, otherwise, I mean, it is so great to have those values, right? And
right,
then throw in, give a little ba-da-dum,
right. Something, yeah,
something
a
like
little
that.
extra spice on that.
Yeah.
Um, it's funny, I was thinking about well, for me, different people evoke different states. And uh, one thing that I think I've really gotten from you, or how I experience you over the years, is being really good with boundaries and kind of almost non-verbally teaching that.
Mm,
And
yeah.
um, and especially when I was a student, I remember like I just felt this feeling like someone's got my back in the room
Uh-huh.
a little
Uh-huh.
bit.
Uh-huh.
Um, and so I think that's one, and I see you interacting with students, and it's almost letting them know that they're not as fragile as they might believe,
Uh-huh.
um,
Uh-huh.
and yet respecting their vulnerability, their
Mm,
fragility, but also letting them know, like, I see you teasing out in people that they have some strength and that they have some durability.
right. Well, when you hold the presupposition everybody has all the resources they need at this next developmental moment, there's a
Mm,
belief, right? The belief is you have it within you.
mm,
Um, when you say boundaries, it also makes me think about, what I offer and what I'm going to say, this is not now, or you
mm,
can figure this out, right? Like having that ability of separation, right?
Mhm.
So I thought about that. But yeah,
Mm.
when you mentioned, when you had been 30, so there is something about what I do when I think about students. It helps me kind of see where they are in their timeline. We've
Mm.
had students as young as 18
Mhm.
and as old as 86.
Mm.
Right. So
Mm.
to be aware of all the different needs, the 18-year-old just finally getting ready to leave the nest, and the 86 saying maybe also getting ready to leave the nest, but
Right.
in a different way.
Different nest.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah. So that's fascinating. I like to think about developmental without there being truth, right? Because like we said, we change every day, and these are
Mm.
generalizations, but it does help to say, oh, okay, this person's figuring this out at this time. Some of the things I use, like age 10 to 25 supposedly is still adolescence, which is always hard to believe,
Hmm.
because anybody who's 25 says, no way am I an
Mhm.
adolescent, right?
Mhm.
And then the other one is what Stephen Gilligan will often say, the first 40 years of your life belong to others, and the next
Mhm.
40 years of life belongs to you, right? But you can
Mhm.
play that out with somebody who's 50. I mean, it doesn't have to be exactly 40.
Right.
I utilize that, I utilize what age are you right now, right? Bringing back
Right.
to the present.
Yeah.
And how would you then, relate to wherever that other self is on the timeline, even if it was 2 weeks ago, right?
Mhm.
So I don't know if that fits into boundaries or just some kind of awareness of also time, and where you are,
Yeah. I'm trying to think how, and this gets more into modeling, like how I've seen you do that or experience it. I mean, the one time that was really obvious that I felt you helped model boundaries for me was I was your demonstration, and we were doing
Mm,
sleight of mouth or criteria
mhm, mhm,
utilization. And so
mm,
people were asking me questions,
mm.
but you were there to make sure that people didn't cross the line,
Ah,
people weren't too forceful.
uh-huh.
And so I had this sense that you were sort of calibrating where I was at.
That's good. That's why you
Um,
said I have your back.
right. And
Mhm,
so that was a good example. And it was almost
mm,
like somebody taking you on a test flight, right? Like,
mhm.
oh, this is what boundaries looks like. And
Uh,
because you were there, I didn't have to think about it very much,
yeah,
but
yeah.
you would step in and say, hey, I don't think that question quite
Uh,
fits right now. And
uh-huh.
so
It sounds, it's a memory for me that's not clear,
mhm.
I get it that you have that memory, and I can imagine it. But what I'm
Mm.
trying to step into is what was I basically about? It was probably about trust and protection of something that I didn't want people to go to. But it reminds me of something else that we do, which is when we talk about influence and using criteria, kind of going back to one of the earlier things you said about me that I
Mm.
could utilize, like if I know, oh, you love jazz, right? Or something like
Mhm.
that. But if I kind of ask you something like, well, would you play jazz and know that you'd have to pierce your some body part that's very sensitive or something. I don't know. Like it's like why do we offer those things? So that I can see where I get like, no, no, that I don't
Right.
really
It's crossed.
remember.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
And what, I mean, sorry, go ahead.
I was gonna say it's like being aware that there's some things that are really obvious that you don't say to somebody. It's almost like the ethical questions. Well, would you do, would you, whatever those stories are, would you have to, push somebody off the bridge if it saved 5 other people? Probably,
Right.
like why are we create setting that up? So that might have been where I was at, but I have to be careful because I might be overprotective.
Mm.
Like when you were
Interesting.
saying it, I was thinking, I wonder if I controlled it, because I don't remember it, right? 'Cause
Mm,
now I think I wait a little bit more, and maybe that's where we are in the zeitgeist of our culture, to
mm,
not, to do your best to be on top of your biases, right? So
mhm.
I might think somebody's gonna, so I don't know. I for sure know that I've changed from whatever would have been a demonstration person, right?
Right,
Yeah,
right. Yeah,
yeah,
many, many moons ago. Yeah.
yeah. Because culturally we changed. We're so aware of, like, well, I never wanted to talk about politics in a classroom or religion, but now
Hmm.
it's just like this sensitivity, this being aware of pronouns. Like, for example, in our work, right? We were talking before, like, where's that part of you that may not be ready to be motivated, or,
Hmm.
and then the question usually is, um, is it okay if I say he, right? Because you're identify as a male. But now I'll usually say, is it okay? What pronoun would you offer? He, she,
Mm,
they. And
mm,
on occasion, it's been they. Sometimes it's it, but you know how we often want to
mhm,
encourage. It's more than an it. It's not an object.
mm.
So that's a big change for me. Hopefully we've been respectful in all the ways that people need to feel respected. We have so many different cultures, right? Such a
Yeah, and well,
experience.
when we were, as we've been talking about boundaries, and that's even that phrase is, I don't know if I like the classification, but it's a very useful thing. And what I
What
realize is,
classification? What
well, even,
classification?
it's funny when you call something a boundary,
Mm-hmm,
it has a certain characteristic to it, putting
mm-hmm,
up a wall. But there are different ways of
mm-hmm,
creating
mm-hmm,
safety,
mm-hmm,
and what I realize
mm-hmm,
is, one of the things you were doing, and is creating a particular context, a particular safe space in which somebody can learn. And I think one of the
mm-hmm.
things that I felt really strongly about, with the NLP Center of New York, uh, is that it was a very safe space,
Yes, I
right?
think people
And
really get that. I think people have really gotten that. And, we talked about doing Zoom now more often, right? And people being surprised that even in Zoom, you could feel community and
mhm,
safe and connected, right? That is definitely, and the fun part, like put
mhm,
that in. That's so important. Look, safety is primary, to build trust, to have that, and to continue. And like I was saying, the different amounts of cultures, it used to be just like, oh, New York, it's so, multicultural. But now with Zoom, we have expanded, because we could have a student in Greece, and
mhm.
in Israel, and in Russia, and in Italy, and in Chile. I mean, really anywhere. So it's very different, you know.
You know, I another thing I wanted to bring up, or really a question I wanted to ask is, uh, over the years, you're very engaged in your work and
Mm,
the NLP work that you do.
mhm,
And
mhm,
I know what keeps me engaged, but I'm curious what
mhm,
keeps you engaged.
mm. Let's think about that. I don't know if I had to come up with what keeps me. I maybe would go back to I am,
You
right?
just
Like this,
are. Yeah.
this is life. This is what I embraced. It always fit the quest of what do I want to do in the early 20s was, well, I like to dance and I like people. So dance movement therapy comes in, right? Then it
Mm,
was like, how am I going to pay for the rent, right? That wasn't
mm,
really happening. And doing that American management sort of was an entree into business consulting, possibly. And
mm,
then discovering NLP, and it was like, wow, I love this system,
mm,
And then Stephen and I continue in a torrid love affair, but like that, bringing us together in the early 80s, and making the commitment to create the NLP Center of New York. It just became who I am, really. I
mm,
don't even know about engagement, but but maybe that piece that I was talking to you about earlier, that there's always some kind of change that's going on and learning. And people, like, we've often said, Rob, at these like free previews when people come that you've led also, that, well, we've been doing this, and NLP was developed in the 70s, but now it's 2021, right? We have a computer chip. We're talking about Zoom classes. But oh my gosh, Rob, people still get into communication mishaps, and people still get angry at themselves. Like, that hasn't changed forever, since who knows when, since beyond, before William James, who, like Descartes, like all the philosophers. This is still going on. So it's fascinating to me, to be part of that world of communication and growth. And I don't know anything else. I mean, I was raised by parents who were in the field of mental health. Was raised, then, like, from age 24, I only had one parent. This parent, my mom, for the rest of my life until like 2016. So she lived for a long time, showed me all you do is like help people.
Therapy. Yeah.
So I think modeling wise, I know a lot about working and being with people, but I also have learned how to take care of myself, right? So that's the boundary also, I'm making sure that we do our movement. I mean, you do great, taking classes. I'm very much like a self-directed, self-motivated learner and movement person and meditator, and all the good things that I can do now. Maybe I wasn't able to do that at age 30, right? Not
You mean
had the time
all
and
those
space.
things?
Well, I did them, but in different ways. I didn't have the time and space because I had young children at the time. Yeah, and I had to work more in a different way. Like, now I choose, I'm going to start seeing clients usually around midday, I have choice about some things. Anyway, there's a lot of, the question of how to keep engaged is, it keeps on being that it is part of me, I'd say. Do you have
and
a
it
sense
seems,
of how you keep engaged?
I think one thing that I do, I don't know that I'm doing it. I'm doing it maybe unconsciously, and I think I see you doing this too, is that at any given moment in time, there's at least one, if not an array of questions that I'm interested in this work. And it usually just starts as a curiosity, kind of like where we started this conversation. Oh, okay, what if we're using the body as the kind of mechanism to invite somebody to be in touch with their resources? How would we do that? And so I'll get curious about something like that. And yes, NLP is a series of tools, but for me, it was always more a field of inquiry, and of curiosity.
Yeah, the asking and not knowing and
So
wondering.
so I'm always kind of obsessively kind of curious. It's not, it's more just, how do things behave, and how can I interact with the world and with people in different ways?
Well, I guess, if we go for balance, you can't always be engaged, right? You gotta sometimes have rest, or I don't know if it's disengagement, but alone time, time to just be with yourself without like the out, because being a coach, a therapist is a lot about out and for the other person. So making sure there's time to just, whatever that is. Sometimes it is
Recharge.
recharge can be watching TV, and recharge can be taking a walk, and there's all these different ways of recharging. What's your latest recharge? Do you have one that you like to do?
Definitely taking walks. I mean, both shorter walks daily, and then on the weekends, I like taking really long walks. hopefully with a friend, you know, so that there can be some rich conversation there. And then reading, I'm almost always reading.
What's your latest book? We haven't chatted about books lately. What's your latest one?
So I almost always have something on the fiction side and then something on the nonfiction side.
Me too.
On the nonfiction side, I've been reading up on David Grove. I think I told you, in the clean language models, and sort of digging into the roots of that a little bit more.
Yeah.
And then on the fiction,
who influenced David Grove?
I think Milton Erickson.
Really?
And I think, but I think David Grove really sort of came up with his own model. And it's interesting, a lot of people, some of them in the NLP community, then took his work and sort of simplified it or streamlined it.
Penny Tompkins and
right.
I forget her partner.
Exactly. And there's a wonderful woman, Tamsin something, who has a great book that I recommend called The Listening Space. And she's a great person. So and kind of a newer friend, a guy named Clint Matheny, was the one who sort of brought that work to my attention and the impact. And so it's great when you have somebody who's into something, because they sort of put a buffet out in front of you. And then on the fiction side, I've been reading these, you know, science fiction and fantasy books. My favorite is this series called The Murderbot Diaries, which are really funny and amazing. Yeah. And I think I was recommending that to Steve. So
okay.
Yeah.
That's good. That's good. I've been reading slowly a fiction called The Cleaning Woman. It's Lucia Berlin. Have you ever heard of Lucia Berlin? I've never had either. She has a mixed background in Texas and Mexico, and you know, lots of dealing with alcoholism, and finally gets sober. But she wrote short stories that are just so poignant. And one that stays in my mind that's so NLP appropriate is being able to observe others, and then these people start making up the story about the people they're observing. And then discover they're completely wrong, but it's sort of like the whole mind read idea.
Yeah.
And then my nonfiction right now is a book called Noise. Do you know that one? Daniel Kahneman and his colleagues. I had really liked Thinking Fast and Thinking Slow years ago. And so this one, as much as I can understand, because there's sometimes it's really goes beyond me, but he's talking about not bias, but judgment, you know. So right now, the day, how we're affected by the weather or the mood, or the fact that we had our interview at this time of day, or whether or not you have a team, which I don't, but like if your team won the night before, you as a judge might then have a lenient sentence. So it wasn't the bias about your, you know, the person, but your own like inner decision making.
It's the framing leading up to that, or the priming, right? It's kind of a priming. Yeah.
Yes. And like, again, the almost impossibility to get rid of noise, like based on your mood, but that's what
interesting.
You know, I like it. And I know I'm not getting what you would get, I guess, if you're studying economics, because that's not really my training, but behavioral economics, I'm really interested in. The science of behavior, right? So that's been interesting for me. So those are the two that I'm managing. Cleaning Manual for Women. I don't know, I forget the short story name, but Lucia Berlin. It's so kind of fun to discover an author, and then you realize, man, oh man, there's so many people to learn about.
Oh my gosh, yeah, it's endless.
But that's something I've appreciated about you, is sharing books. So I'm glad to know. I'll think about the Murder Diaries. You know, I do a lot more listening. I've been doing a lot more listening, because I'm always feeling like I'm on the move, And
Mm.
so just
So books
getting,
and podcasts or
oh
both?
yeah, the podcasts. I'm really happy with some of the podcasts lately.
Mm.
I really like Ezra Klein. I don't know if you've listened to him at all.
Mm-mm.
He'll have a variety of interviews. And then
Mm.
at the end of his interview, which I probably was influenced by, he'll say, okay, tell me 3 books that you recommend.
Ah,
He
interesting.
always ends
Okay.
with reading, even though it might not have anything to do. Sometimes it's exactly on the topic.
Mm.
And so but you and I have always shared reading as
Yeah.
part of our friendship too, you know.
Yeah.
So where does this interview go, Rob? Who's actually listening or watching?
I'm not sure. I think a lot of it is folks that I've spoken to already,
Uh-huh.
and the people that I've invited to speak with, it's a bit of a broad group, but it's many of them are coaches,
Mhm.
people whose work I respect or I'm intrigued with.
Mhm.
I had a couple conversations with Beppe, one of your
Mhm.
former
Mhm.
students.
Mhm.
Um, and then, one of my Feldenkrais teachers, and I think I'm going to have another one or two on. Actually, 2 of my yoga kind of
Oh, great.
mentors were on.
Mhm.
And then, just when I meet people with interesting, what I find interesting career paths, I'll invite them on just so that people get to hear the story of their career. Because I think that's
Mhm.
something that we don't have a lot. You don't get to hear the arc of someone's career
Yeah.
very often.
Yeah.
So
I
that's
like
one of
that.
the things I'm listening
I
for.
like
Yeah.
that. I would think it would be great for you to do one of your modeling as an
Mm,
online demonstration. I don't know if
mm,
you've done that, but to really
I haven't.
go
Yeah.
through your modeling
Mm,
and of course talk about your own career trajectory.
hmm Well, it's interesting. Yeah, I have a link, and maybe I'll link it there. There's a couple gentlemen who have a podcast, and they invited me on,
Mhm.
and then I got to tell my whole story,
Oh, good. What was that
which is
podcast?
really long. What's that?
What was that podcast?
I'm gonna have to dig up the
Oh,
name,
that's okay. That's okay.
but I will link it, and
No
it,
recuerdo, huh? No recuerdos. You don't remember. How do I
I
say
don't
it?
remember. Oh yeah,
No,
and your Spanish, nice.
no recuerdos. Yeah, my Spanish that you surpassed me in Japanese like 5, 6, 7 years ago already. But I
I'm
haven't
not
given
sure.
up.
Yeah.
I have not given up, but I probably remain a 5-year-old in Espanol. So, well, thank you so much for all of this, opportunity to chat, to
Well, thank
connect.
you,
Yeah, to
and
see you.
hopefully next time with tea again. So, and
Ah,
not over Zoom. So
okay, you're right. There's some things that we should continue to do in person, have tea together.
yeah.
Okay,
Okay.
thank you so
Thank you.
Okay, adios.
Thanks. Adios. Bye.
Oganishimasu. How do we say oganishimasu? Oganishimasu.
Onegaishimasu.
Onegaishimasu. Okay.
Bye.
Bye-bye.